about everything Docker, containers, orchestration, DevOps, community in general. I've got some great guests, and if this is your first time to the show, this is something I do every week. I think we're 30 plus weeks now, and sometimes I have guests. But mostly it's about you. It's about getting questions from you, talking to the audience in the chat. So if you have questions, get them into YouTube chat now. We'll be getting to those later in the show. This will be a special event, obviously, for the next 4 weeks. I'm going to have guests on the show that will be at DockerCon. They're either running the show there or talking or helping the community there. They are somehow involved with helping DockerCon be an awesome show. So let's introduce our guest and get on with this fun little thing we do on the internet. I gotta click all the right buttons. All right. Today, I'd like to introduce Jenny Burcio down at the bottom there. And we got Nils De Moor at the top. If you've been on this show before, you've probably seen Nils before. He's been on a couple of times. Actually, this was like, I think, we've had 2 DockerCons before this together that we've actually live streamed. So we're like old hat at this. So welcome to the show, both of you. Jenny runs the community and advocacy at Docker, where she helps awesome Docker community members inspire and educate others. Hello, Jenny.
Hi.
And we have Nils, who's the co-founder of Woorank, where with the sole purpose of helping website owners improve their online visibility. And as a co-founder, wearing many hats, he developed a passion for automation, scaling, and distributing services at scale, and was an early adopter like myself of Docker, and he was an early adopter of Docker, and a captain since 2017 and based in Brussels. Jenny is in San Francisco at Docker headquarters, and I am in Virginia in a bedroom. So, so welcome to the show. How was your morning?
Who are you talking
to? I'm talking to both of you. You're going to talk over top of each other. This is how it works. So, Jenny, what is your responsibilities to DockerCon? Like, we see you every day helping with the community, but describe a typical crazy day of trying to manage this insane conference.
Yeah, so it's a lot. I manage the speakers and getting all the content set up and the preparation. Our speakers do a ton of prep before actually delivering their talks at DockerCon. And help create a schedule that is interesting to our attendees. So I make sure that people are very busy, like yourself, right? I've got you signed up to do quite a few things at DockerCon.
Yeah, that's one of the jobs of a captain at DockerCon, right? Is to you're a community leader, which means that you're committed to. Well, if you say yes to everything, you're committed to the whole week.
That's the key. Learn how to say no. No, so it's awesome, right? Like I get to kick off the conference with captains and our community leaders on Monday. And we also have an amazing women's summit going on Monday for attendees, as well as any women working in tech can come on over to that. And then we have Docker Pals that evening and the welcome reception. And then Tuesday, all the content starts.
And let's talk about Docker Pals for a second, because it's the one thing I can't stop talking about between conferences, because the hardest part, especially about big conferences, is companies don't always have the budget to send your whole team, right? So then you show up at a conference, you might be the only one from your company there. It might be the first time you're there, and you know no one. There's 5,000 people in the room, and you have no friends yet. And talk about Docker Pals. Like, how's that going to solve that problem?
Yeah, so like that's just not what the Docker community is about, right? We want everyone to go to DockerCon and feel like they belong and are a part of the experience there. And so we put a lot of effort into taking that feeling away. So with Docker Pals, we ask people who've been to DockerCon several times to serve as a guide. And then people are new or maybe don't have those connections or relationships can be pals, and we pair groups up to meet each other. before the conference virtually, and then Monday night we have a meeting point where you actually meet in person. And guides serve as someone to give you advice on what talks to go to or different DockerCon kind of extras to make your experience better. And of course, as a friendly face, and same with the pals that you're paired with.
Yeah, and at first, when I first heard of that, it seemed cool, but I didn't really get it until I was at a party later in the week or one of the after events, and the Docker pals were hanging out with their mentor. What's the
Guide.
pal? Their guide. Thank you. And they were like, we were at a dinner, and of course, everyone's split up at the event, so you may not know where everybody's at. And they were basically all rendezvousing at the different events together with their basically they were like a little crew. And it was great because they all acted like they had known each other. I mean, they'd only known each other a couple of days, but they act like they'd known each other for years. And I kept running into other captains and other community leaders that were acting as guides that kept doing that. And I kept meeting the people they were with, and those people were talking about their first DockerCon and how amazing it was. And yeah, I think it's really cool, and I'm sure that other conferences are going to steal this idea because it's a great thing.
And even on top of that, right? So many of them keep in contact and come to office to meet whoever their guide or pals were when they're in town. We hear lots of stories about just friendships really being made at DockerCon that way.
Yeah. Nils, what was your first DockerCon? Was it?
I think it was the very first DockerCon in also San Francisco, I believe. Like in a Hilton or one of the big hotels, like maybe 200-300 people, attendees. Pretty small compared to what it is these days. But yeah, I've been around for quite a while now.
Yeah, there's not too many people that have been around since the very first conference. Do you still have that shirt? You still have like all the conference shirts?
I don't even know if they handed out shirts.
Was free shirts?
Can't recall. I really can't recall, but yeah, it was 5 years ago, I guess. Is that possible? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, what year is this of DockerCon? I don't even know how many we've had.
6, 7. That's definitely an Ashlyn question.
Yeah. We're gonna have to have Ashlyn, who basically runs DockerCon. We're gonna have her on the show. She couldn't make it today, but we're gonna have her on soon. So, Nils, so knowing this DockerCon's back in San Francisco, what are you looking forward to? What obviously we're back in the Moscone Center, which an amazing location, right down in the heart of San Francisco downtown. What do you think about it? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, as always, looking forward to, well, obviously to travel across the pond. That's always a nice excuse for me, to come to the US. But for the conference specifically, well, of course, your typical answer would be for the talks and stuff like that. But what I enjoy most, or what I'm mostly looking forward to when coming to the conference, is meeting people. So first of all, meeting the captains, seeing what they've been up to since the last time we saw each other, which is always the last DockerCon in Barcelona. And then just walking on the floor, talking to people, answer questions, help people out. That's what I'm looking forward to. And then, I guess you'll get into it more during this live stream. But this year we'll also have, or we'll again have a summit at Thursday.
Yes.
Open Source Summit.
I'm excited about that.
I'm really excited about that too, because I think it's been a few DockerCons we didn't do that, but now it's back again, and that's another always gives another view on certain topics that are and certain projects that are going on right now.
Yeah. I think, we definitely had a couple of years where they were just kind of mixed in with the rest of everything, and you could still go see that stuff if you wanted, but we used to do birds of a feather, so that's back. That's a really great where people are just sitting around the table, essentially talking about the future of Docker tooling, other stuff that Docker's working on with the community that's not necessarily a part of their products yet. So that's probably maybe years out from being used. Like BuildKit is finally here, but BuildKit has been a part of the Open Source Summit and conversations for years now, and so it took that long to really get that to fruition and have that start being added to the Docker CLI and Docker interface. And so yeah, Open Source Summit, it's fun. Funny, it's even if you did mix it up throughout the conference, having a whole day just dedicated to the open source side of it and the community-driven code side of it, really not a lot of corporate conferences do that, right? I mean, obviously, if you have just a completely open source conference, like that's one thing. But to have a product-based conference that's really about solving business problems and working on business tooling, to have a whole day purely with open source and have the speakers that are basically the ones creating that open source or leading those communities, it's super great. And if you're ever involved in any of that, or if you're interested in being involved, that's probably the best place to be on that last day there. Just because you can just basically sit around a table with the people that make it. So that's always been fun. In fact, I think in Austin maybe was the last one I remember where someone was on stage and we were talking about the future of Docker, the future of Swarm, and then we got to break up and I got to sit with all the Swarm engineers and just talk about what we could do with networking and all the different improvements we could make. And some of that stuff has made it in since then. So it's really a fun day to see the stuff that people talk about there and get feedback from there actually turn into real features and products. So, all right. So this year we have a coupon. Do I have a better coupon, Jenny? You got me
for our YouTube live listener?
Yeah. So if anyone hasn't gotten their ticket yet for DockerCon, I have a discount code, but is that the one you want to give out?
We can give a special one for everyone on today. If you haven't gotten your ticket yet, use YouTube Live, and you can get 25% off.
25.
Woo.
Nice.
Whoa. So if you go to dockercon.com, I don't make any money off of this coupon. I just get street cred for being on a YouTube Live show. So we all get a little bit of credit for this one. So yeah, so you would use coupon code YouTube Live when you sign up, and you get 25% off. And what are the dates? I don't even have it in front of me.
April 29th.
And we'll keep that code live through end of tomorrow. And dates for DockerCon, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
29th of April through May 2nd.
Right. At the Moscone Center. So, all right. I'm talking at DockerCon. I've got a Swarm workshop. Nils, are you doing anything?
We're doing a workshop together, remember?
Yes.
Yeah, so
we're
doing
also doing a workshop in the same room.
Yep, indeed. The Swarm workshop twice, I guess.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I'm sure we'll do a YouTube Live,
of course,
like we've done in the past. And I don't know that we're going to do anything else other than the entire day of Docker captains hanging out and training and stuff like that. It's also fun to point out that if you are in a city that has a Docker meetup and you're interested in Docker, I run a Docker meetup, Nils runs a Docker meetup, and if you have one in your city, you can not only go to those, there's hundreds of them around the world, all focused on container tooling, not just the Docker products, but the whole container ecosystem of stuff. You can give talks there. You can obviously learn lots of stuff there. There's always lots of free labs. But if you don't have one in your city and you're really interested in containers and you want to start one, you can reach out to Docker through the website. Somewhere there's a community sign-up thing. Jenny might have something more direct we can throw into Slack chat or into YouTube chat, rather. But if you're interested in that stuff, Docker has a community summit, which on the first day of DockerCon is for meetup leaders that, obviously they volunteer in their cities to run their meetups. And so for a certain amount of those, Docker can help sort of sponsor the meetup, help you with things. But they also provide training every year at DockerCon to just basically be a good meetup runner and learn how to get good speakers, learn how to manage a community, learn about things like code of conduct and all this stuff so if you're ever interested in helping run a community, not only can you do one in your city or be a part of one related to containers, but Docker also provides like at least a half a day, if not a full day's worth of education and information at DockerCon every year for those people. So that's really cool. Because running a meetup is hard, no matter what meetup it is about in your area, and it's great to have support and help from Docker themselves. All right, so Jenny, we're gonna see you at the first day of DockerCon. What else do people need to know?
Yeah, so probably before DockerCon, maybe we take a step back and talk about the workshops, because this is something that you need to sign up for beforehand as part of your registration.
Good point. That's different than last year, right?
Different than what we've done in the past, just because the demand is so great. We want to make sure that those that need to have a seat in the class. So maybe you and Nils can share a little bit about your workshop specifically, and then we can talk about that.
Others. Yeah. So, and are all workshops run through twice? So there's 2 opportunities for each one, or does it depend?
No, it just depends. There's a couple opportunities for each one.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'm running a Swarm. Nils and I and a couple of other people that are helping out TAing are running a Swarm workshop. So it's for people that are not new to Docker. They know what containers are. They've built images. They've maybe run some containers, but they want to get started in orchestration. And I always recommend people start with Swarm, and if they want to go to Kubernetes, go after that. It's because Swarm is easy to learn, easy to use, and it's a great first step. And then if you feel like you need to go to the extra mile of Kubernetes, then a lot of that knowledge transfers, a lot of the concepts around multi-host container solutions, clustering and orchestration, all that stuff is similar. Maybe the terminology might be a little different, but it's all there. And so we do a 3-hour workshop on Swarm and a 2-hour. Well, if you hang out afterwards, I might talk for 3. All right, so we're gonna have to cut down the number of slides because it's only a 2-hour workshop on basically you're going to be building a 3-node Swarm in AWS from scratch and then deploying distributed services on it. Deploying management GUIs, logging, monitoring, networking, storage, all the things will be talked about, and then you'll have some take-home assignments if you don't get through all the stuff in that workshop. So depending on how fast you type. So what else we got?
We have a Developing with Docker Desktop workshop, Kubernetes 101, building a secure pipeline, Kubernetes security, monitoring. So we have a number of really great workshops being delivered by either Docker captains or some Docker employees.
Right.
So the way you sign up for workshops is through your registration when you register for the conference.
Right. Yeah, and that's key this time because they're not. You can't just show up on the day of and think you're going to get into a workshop, right?
Yes.
Now, something that I should note is that if you're on the Docker channel on YouTube, all of the prior DockerCon, or nearly all of the prior DockerCon sessions, the talks, are now free on YouTube. So you can see DockerCon EU from last year and DockerCon San Francisco from a year ago. And all those are there. So if you aren't able to make it to DockerCon and you want to, or if you're on the fence and you want to see what the content is like in the past, and I've always really liked how much work Jenny and the rest of the teams put into elevating the quality of content. I think we get, as speakers, we get more hand-holding and prep work than any other conference I've been a part of, which is great. Even if you're a veteran, it's nice to know that you can do a sound check, you can actually do a full run-through on site beforehand. So usually every talk I've been to is always well-polished. It's always very professional, and it's a big stage, right? There's sometimes 800 people in the room or more. So they can be really big rooms and a lot of lights on you. And so it's great that Docker put so much effort into that. so that the conference, obviously there's a lot of chance for new people to speak, and they have something called the community theater, where if you're more interested in like a lightning talk, you can actually submit those. And Docker, I think, puts out announcements like everybody else, right? You put out a call for papers months in advance. And I know there's special opportunities for people, their first time speaking in particular, if they're got a container thing. Do we have anything to talk about after DockerCon? Like, is there anything that we can, for later this year? Anything?
What do you mean?
I'm putting you on the spot.
An inside scoop.
Yeah. If you can't make it to DockerCon because it's in a month and your boss won't sign the check, is there anything next for people that we won't be seeing? By the way, if you're going to be at DockerCon, you better come and high five Nils and I, and then see if you can hunt down Jenny, if you can find her behind the scenes, and give us all high fives, because we always like to see everybody, and then you're going to have to get a Docker selfie in honor of Betty. We'll have to keep the selfie train.
That alive.
Keep that alive. But yeah, do we have any announcements yet, or is there going to be an announcement after DockerCon about what's next?
Yes, so we have one global DockerCon starting this year. So this is the DockerCon. And so if you are on the fence, you definitely want to try to convince your boss to sign the check and get you there. And if you need help with that, please let me know. I'm Jenny in the community Slack. And then we will be doing a series of kind of regional, smaller events throughout the fall.
Oh, all right. But so the announcements on those are pending. We have that hasn't slipped through on anything yet.
Pending.
Okay. Pending.
Now, sorry, building on what you said, what's the best way for people to kind of give you that high five, aside from looking out for you or looking out for Michael Irwin in his dinosaur suit, right? What, maybe hallway tracks or certain things? How should people get in contact with their captains?
Don't we have a Meet the Captains thing?
I mean, I don't know, but we
is
can
that,
make
is that
that
something I'm
happen.
supposed to know? I feel like there is a Meet the Captains thing. Well, first off, pay attention to the DockerCon Twitter stream. If you're on Twitter, when you're at the event, obviously there's an in-app stuff that you can sort of see what's going on at the event. We have something called hallway tracks, which are basically individual one-on-ones or small groups, which I always do one. We'll be doing one this year as well. I always do one on Swarm. So if you're interested in Swarm orchestration or maybe the difference between Swarm and Kubernetes and stuff like that, you can come to my hallway track. Even if it's like booked, you just kind of sneak in. They let you through. So a lot of the captains have those. So if you're interested in specific topics, there's tons of hallway tracks. Like there's hallway tracks all day, every day, and they happen throughout the event, and they're basically like anyone can start one. And if people sign up for your topic, then you can get more people into your group, and you can basically have a little powwow right there on the second floor of the conference center. So at least that's where I think it was last time. And they have a whole area of the floor dedicated to that. So that's a great way, and that's the thing, right? If you're going to a conference just for the talks, well, that's not really enough anymore. Like we can all watch videos on YouTube. So that's why I love DockerCon, because really I spend most of my time talking to people in the hallway tracks, just meeting people in the actual hallway, talking after workshops or after sessions to people that have specific questions. And so to me, obviously there's the parties and the events afterwards and whatnot. But to me, that's the real value of big conferences like this, is you're able to meet the industry experts and talk to them about, get one-on-ones with them and talk to them about your issues or your questions and your learning and stuff like that. And then if you have some time left, you go to sessions and learn the topics that are going to be on YouTube at some point someday. But I think the workshops, the hallway tracks are key, because those won't be available later. Like you won't be able to do those on YouTube for free later if you aren't able to make it to the conference. So those are definitely, I think, the two, for me, the top parts of that. The hallway tracks are fantastic. I love the hallway tracks. Mm-hmm. And if you've never been to .com before, they have a whole app dedicated to finding hallway tracks on your topics. And those hallway tracks are like 40 minutes or 45 minutes. So you could fill all 3 days with just meeting on specific topics with specific people in the hallway tracks. if you didn't want to do sessions.
So let me, for those that haven't been to DockerCon, like literally we took the idea that the hallway track is where the networking happens and actually formalized that and created, worked with the company to create an app so that birds of a feather and networking conversations are in the hands of the attendees, right? So it's not like Docker says, oh, here's the topic, everyone come to this table at this time. The attendees get to pick their topics that they want to talk about and then look for other topics. It's like honestly like a matchmaking app where it's like, oh, hey, that's the topic I want to talk about. I'm going to join this area, right? We have a dedicated area and a dedicated concierge to help bring those conversations together. And so it's just an excellent way to really amp up the networking that normally happens at a conference. And you're going to meet so many more people and get a lot more questions answered this way because it's so targeted to what you want to talk about.
Yeah, it's a lot like the PALS program too. Like both of these are breaking down the barriers of just, otherwise you have to walk up to random strangers and say, hi, I'm networking. Like, nobody does this. So yeah, I think it's great. And I know that seeing behind the scenes, we're always trying to figure out ways to further break down those barriers and get people to meet each other and to find people that have like-minded concerns or things they're working on together. So, Nils, have you looked at any of the talks yet? Is there anyone in particular that you would recommend people go see other than our fabulous Swarm workshop?
Of course, that's the key one. Other than that, not specifically or not specifically one talk, but what interests me, or has sparked my interest in the last couple of weeks and months is now the way, and I think it went out of beta in Kubernetes. You now can join both Linux and Windows nodes into your Kubernetes cluster. That's a topic, although it's not very useful because we're a Linux shop only, but I like the idea behind it because that has always been one of those questions you get at meetups and when talking to people about Docker containers, Kubernetes, and that ecosystem. Like, how can we the final goal, like running Linux containers on Windows and the other way around? It's not exactly that yet, but I have the feeling we're inching closer to a world where everything can run interchangeably. So I'm definitely going to be in the lookout for those kind of topics. And then of course, so there's always this black belt track. The conference talks are divided in tracks, going from 101s to up to black belts. So they're very expert level talks. And they always go really deep into one particular topic. That's always the track that I keep a close eye on, and probably will watch a few of those talks.
Yeah, I think for me, obviously there's lots of stuff going on in, like you've mentioned, service mesh and higher levels of the stack. And we have our container engines down at the bottom. We have orchestration somewhere in the middle, and then we have the networking. And then on top of that, we have these new concepts around something called service mesh. And at DockerCon EU, something CNAB was announced, which is a sort of a format for how we describe complex applications and what it takes to deploy that application, all the resources and things it needs inside of one or more files, and then we're able to use that presumably to deploy it in an automated way, regardless of infrastructure. We haven't really seen a lot, at least I haven't seen a lot of tooling coming out about that. But so for me, like, I'm going to look for anything that has the word CNAB in it and to see if there's any progress on that and what ideas people are creating based on that concept, because to me it's another higher level abstraction of us being able to deploy things like compose files into production with all the resources and things we need to deploy our app in sort of a single shot solution. And so Docker has recently opened up 3 different open source repos that are kind of related to that. They have this Docker app, which is basically takes compose files and turns them into things that you can use with like Kubernetes and Helm, and you can deploy them in images, and it's pretty cool for production type workflows. If you're related to the DevOps side, look up Docker app. It's an open source repo. Then they recently just opened up a new repo called Docker Stacks, which is the Swarm's stack concept inside of a container as an API, so that you can then use, you can basically create third-party API tooling to do stack-like things against a Swarm without needing the Docker CLI involved. And then related to that, on the Kubernetes side, they have the Compose for Kubernetes, which they open sourced in the fall, last autumn. And Compose for Kubernetes allows us now to use that, a lot of that Compose format for deploying Kubernetes. So I think all of these together create this really exciting workflow around, we're all used to using Compose files locally, but now we're increasingly able to use them to deploy to production and to describe our production workflows, whether or not it's Swarm or Kubernetes or whatever. So I think I'm going to be looking for talks, and I know that there's, on the open source day, there's specific talks just about that stuff, and they're probably all at the same time, so I can't see them all at the same time. But there's lots of stuff going on the open source day, so I'm going to have to be in 3 rooms at once, and obviously the Swarm Kit room, because we're going to be getting some information about the future of Swarm, which I will be talking on this channel next month after DockerCon. I won't shut up about it, probably. And then serverless. I even see on the open source day we've got serverless discussions there, which, if you didn't know about serverless, it's running functions on top of infrastructure so that you don't have to understand the underlying components. You can just deploy your functions. But the secret sauce really is containers underneath. So to me, serverless just means containers that you don't have to worry about. So if you're someone who has to be responsible for the infrastructure to deploy for serverless, you need to know about containers. You need to be able to deploy container orchestration, stuff like that. So anyway, anything else before we get to the chat? Any other last minute things before we take some questions from the audience?
We haven't talked about the parties.
The DockerCon parties, basically what happens is they rent out a street, and then whatever's on that street, we all have, we listen to music, we have fun, we have fantastic food.
We are at an awesome museum this year.
Uh-oh. Is it a secret? Can't say.
You know, I don't actually
Spoiler.
know, and
Spoiler.
Ashley's going to stop me, so. No, DockerCon parties are always super fun. And so it definitely, if you're coming, make the time to at least go for a little bit. I think you'll enjoy yourself.
Yeah, in Copenhagen, we had like a 8-bit or like a arcade style party, which was a lot of fun. There was a whole bank of all these old arcade games that you could stand in line and play. And I was actually tempted, but because I love old video games, but then I realized that people that were playing them were actually good at them. I didn't want to be embarrassed by lasting only 3 minutes on Miss Pac-Man or something. So I opted out. But and that was really cool. And then last year, what was our party last year? Oh, we were on a boat.
We were on the boats in the pier.
We were on an actual dock. Yes, that was a lot of
I
fun.
gotta say, Austin was one of my favorite ones.
Yes. What is that street called?
Down Rainy Street.
Rainy Street. If you're familiar with Austin.
It was awesome.
Yeah, and there was like a band at every bar or restaurant, whatever. That was really cool. So hope to see you all there at DockerCon for sure. And come to the talks. If you're too busy, just find me at the hallway track. We'll take a selfie. We'll put it on the internet. And yeah. So right now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some questions from the audience. There's a lot of people chatting, so I'm gonna take a second to read through and see if I can't find some solid questions. So if you have any questions about DockerCon or just container stuff in general, we can get super geeky if you want. But obviously you have DockerCon people on the show today, so it'd be good if you had questions for them, like how do I get a speaking gig at DockerCon? What's the process? How do I become a captain? That's also a good question someone might ask. I see questions, but they're not really questions. Michael Irwin says, "What's up, everyone?" Another Docker captain on the chat. Wellington remembers the Moby Summit. Yep. We're not calling it a Moby Summit anymore. It's just Open Source Summit, but it used to be called the Moby Summit.
Yep. And it's not, it's not a separate event either. It's part of the conference. So when you sign up to attend the conference, you can schedule those talks as well.
Well, that's a good point, because in the past it was always it was kind of like a different thing.
Yep.
So now everyone can attend.
There's no separate registration?
No separate registration for the Moby Summit, for the Open Source Summit, and no separate registration required for the talks either. So talks are first come, first serve. And so the only thing that really requires separate registration are the workshops as part of when you do, and the Women's Summit on Monday for all women in tech.
Sure.
That does require separate registration.
Yeah, that's actually listed there, right? It's like listed in the itinerary.
Yes, it's listed in the itinerary. We have a page on it on dockercon.com. We also have a page on Open Source Summit. And we will be reaching out to women to let them know about the summit on Monday.
Right. People in chat are remembering the Moby Summits of the past and the Docker Pals of the past. Well, we have a technical question. Oh, how about certification for Docker?
Certification will be happening at DockerCon. So if you want to get certified, definitely sign up to do that.
So we're talking about the Docker Certified Associate, right? So that's the Docker certification on Docker Enterprise, as well as the open source tooling. And basically, if you prep beforehand, you can sign up and take it at DockerCon.
So Bret, how should they prep?
So I have some courses, shameless plug, this little link right here, boop-a-doop, bretfisher.com/Docker. I have some courses you can buy. So the Docker Mastery course at that link will get you probably about 50% of the way to the DCA. The other 50% is you're going to need to download if you don't have access through your company, you're going to need to get Docker Enterprise, because the DCA is about Docker Enterprise, and of course it rides on top of all the open source tooling, the Kubernetes, the Swarm, and everything underneath. But as far as I know, right now the DCA does not require deep Kubernetes knowledge, although I've heard that there's going to be an update later this year for that. So if you're someone who's already savvy on Docker and savvy on a little bit of the Swarm, and you want to take the test, you probably have time to study and get ready for it by downloading an eval of Docker Enterprise on Docker's website. And then inside my courses, I give you information on basically what you need to do to prep. Docker actually gives you a guide that gives you the sort of the bullet points of what you need to know, and that's what I used. I just went through, and if I didn't know exactly how to do that thing off the top of my head, I went and studied it so that I knew that bullet. And I just went through, the 50 or 60 bullets or whatever there were. I will put a link in chat on... basically, if you just search Bret Fisher DCA, I think it's in the first Google link. But I will throw that in chat for the DCA. That was a great question. And so you can take it there. And obviously, Marcos is putting in a DCA prep guide. So there's definitely some prep guides out there, but they're pretty much based off of Docker's official prep guide of what you need to cover. And so you can get that there at the conference before they change it to be all the latest and greatest stuff. So if you're familiar with the older stuff of Docker Enterprise, like the pre-2.0 stuff, definitely take it now, because soon it's going to be updated to all the latest stuff, and you'll have to refresh your skills to take the test.
And Biker 2010 asks if the test is different in person from the online version. No, it's not. So take it at your convenience, or take it at DockerCon, whatever works to get certified. In addition, we have a actual official Docker training that you can sign up for pre-DockerCon, but I wouldn't take that training and then take the certification. If you're planning to take the certification, get prepped beforehand.
Right.
It's not that quick of a turnaround.
Right, for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't. And if you're at the conference, the last thing you want to do at the conference is sitting in your hotel room cramming, right? Like, be at the conference. Yeah, definitely a tip. So I see a question here also from Biker about container scanning. So he says, if you can't use Docker Enterprise for container scanning, what can you use? And threw out some different topics there. So Claire is definitely one of them. Check out Microscanner. That's the one that I have used, Microscanner from Aqua Security. The nice thing about that one is you put it in your container images and it runs as a part of your build. So you can have a separate build stage in your Docker builds that will scan the image. And it's free open source. They have like more enhanced features if you get a paid version, but they have the CVE database inside that version. Claire also does similar things. Of course, there's other tools that scan from outside the image. So there's pros and cons. Maybe you want to do both. I think there's some good analysis on Buffer. I don't know if Nils, if you remember this. Someone did a comparison of scanners recently on Kubernetes. Or no, that wasn't Kubernetes. It's container security scanning. Let's see if I can find that link real quick. It's not going to show me. But there's definitely a link. If you hang around in chat after the show, I will put the link in the chat later. But there's a comparison of security scanners. And just like antivirus that we've had for decades, security scanning isn't guaranteed. Like every scanner is better at something. So one scanner might miss a bug. Another scanner might miss a vulnerability. So it might be best if you're really in an environment that requires it, you might need to do multiple levels of scanning at different products so that you get that. As far as I understand with the Docker Enterprise, there's actual multiple scanners coming out of that system. So you get a little bit more out of the box there than if you were to just go find open source tooling. The Docker Enterprise stuff is sort of a higher level of scanning and more thorough. So great question on that. And if you are interested in Node.js, that is actually going to be in one of my lectures of my upcoming Docker for Node.js course. And the way you find out about that is that same URL, bretfisher.com/Docker. You can sign up for my newsletter there. And my newsletter is where you get all the best coupons for my courses and notices of the upcoming courses like the Docker for Node.js, which I will be talking about at Docker.
There we go.
I'm not actually doing a Swarm talk this year. I'm actually doing a talk about the best Node.js workflow when you're using Docker. So basically, if you're a Node programmer, or even if you're just more of a front-end programmer and you're focused on JavaScript, but when you're developing, you're maybe using Node backends to do that, then that's probably a thing you need to watch because there's always something that we can optimize in our workflows. And I'm going to hammer out 40 minutes worth of the best stuff. I'm going to give away all the secrets.
Yes, don't miss Bret's session. He always gives away all the secrets. And so you will leave better because of it.
Yeah.
So Chad is asking, it's his first DockerCon, and he's asking, what are the go-to talks, events, and after events at DockerCon? Like, what's the best way to take advantage? So let's put on our guides hats right now. Like, what would we tell any newbies that are must-dos at DockerCon?
Nils goes first.
All right.
Because he's the veteran.
I think I already kind of answered that question earlier. Like we said, the hallway tracks.
Yeah, sorry.
Pal. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, for someone new, Pals is definitely the one to sign up for. It starts the first day, right?
Yeah, so the meeting of PALs happens, I think, at 5:00 on Monday. So that's where you actually in person get connected to your PAL. And that's right before the opening happy hour in the expo hall. So you start DockerCon knowing someone.
Right. I think that's probably the number one thing. And I think that, so here's the thing about PALs. if you do the PALs, it doesn't cost anything, right? It's just a free thing that comes with the conference, or included in the conference, and all of the other things that you might need to know are going to be found out by your guide, right? Like where the best, where the best places to eat in the area are. Well, the guy was probably there last year, so they know the area a little bit. Like if you're new to San Francisco, you name it, they're going to know the format of the show. They're going to, because you can't be a guide and be new at DockerCon, right? The guide is going to be a veteran of the conference, and they're also going to be a very nice and friendly person that is going to want to help you. That's why they're a guide. So they're going to do their best to make your DockerCon experience as awesome as it can be. So I think we can talk about hallway tracks and after events and checking out the open source summit and getting involved with the Birds of a Feather session if you're really into that. But you're going to learn all that stuff as a Docker Pal.
So why would someone want to be a guide? Like, let's talk about the benefit of participating as a guide, because I think hands down, right, it makes sense if you're coming to the conference by yourself, you sign up to be a pal. Same goes for guides, really. Like, you can be a DockerCon veteran and know people, but we're going to help you make additional connections, and you're going to learn something. And you're also kind of giving back to a community that is so connected and kind of so focused on giving back. I don't know.
Right.
What do you guys think?
Yeah. So in my early days working with Docker or playing with Docker, I also quite early started a meetup here in Belgium. Not because I was a veteran or knew a lot about Docker, but it was more about, okay, there must be other people close to me who have probably the same questions, have played with it, might be able to answer certain questions I have, and the other way around. So that's why I started a meetup. And yeah, that's actually what value we could bring to each other, and that's how this whole community also grew locally. And I think the same idea kind of applies to DockerCon. Like, you can be a veteran, but there's always room to meet more people and learn from other people. Even if they're a beginner or an expert, everyone has his own way of working with Docker in their own companies, on their own free time. So it's always interesting to learn from each other and share your experiences. So both from a Docker guide perspective as a pal, it's interesting to get to know other people and share what you've been doing in the container space.
Yes, I agree with all that. I'm reading in chat. Well, first, have we talked to people about how do they become a guide? Have we described that?
You sign up to be a guide, and I think we have the links on dockercon.com.
All right. Kevin in chat, unrelated question. Kevin in chat says, hey, you mentioned that Swarm API thing you talked about. Do you have a link? Yes, I'm putting that in chat. That's on github.com Docker stacks, I believe is the right one. So how do they sign up?
So you can sign up for the program on dockercon.com. If you want to be a guide, please message me on community Slack. Jenny.
Ooh, how do they sign up for community Slack? So Docker has a community Slack chat.
Good one, Bret. Let me find that link.
And I feel like it's like Dockerly community or something.
Yeah, we made it easy. Let's see where.
It's so easy we forgot.
That's true. How am I going to find it? Okay, hold on. Keep talking while I find it.
All right. Well, we'll post that link. If in case you're not in the Docker Slack, that's also where DockerCon happens. So if you're going to DockerCon, that's the Slack that everybody hangs out in at the conference. If you're not going to DockerCon, it's where everybody hangs out and talks about containers, Kubernetes, whatever, compose.
And there's a link to join the Slack from the dockercon.com homepage. But we will also post the link because I found it.
All right. Let's see. I'm looking through chat. Someone asked Swarm versus Kubernetes.
That's its own session for sure.
So,
but
yes. Oh, sorry.
We have some talks that will shed light on that at DockerCon, right?
We do. And that was actually a topic several times recently. So if you jump on so that's a person asking that in my YouTube chat. So in the channel you're currently watching this, look in that channel for Swarm or Kubernetes topics. There's at least one video that talks about Swarm and Kubernetes in the title. So you can watch that from previous episodes because it's a common question we get about every week, which is an excellent question because it's a choice we all have to make if we're going to go orchestration, right? Which orchestrator do I use? It's not just Swarm versus Kubernetes. There's lots of other ones, but that is a common question that I get. So check that out. What is the validity of the Docker certificate? It is ideally for people that are going to be deploying Docker solutions. So if you are, if you're in a company that is considering Docker Enterprise, or if you're just going to be focusing on the Docker open source tooling, then that certification is key, right? If you're looking to get a new job and you want to sort of be on the latest and greatest stuff, they're, probably the top 3 certifications that I would be focusing on is an AWS certificate of some sort, depending on your role, a Kubernetes certification if you're looking at orchestration, and then a Docker Enterprise certification if you're looking at that. If you're focused on Red Hat, I'm not sure if they have one, but definitely I think those 3. The nice thing about the DCA is that if someone at your company that you're going to go for it knows what it is, they know that then basically you know the key important stuff, not just about the command line tooling for Docker and Swarm and the enterprise tooling on top of that, like Docker registry and the UCP control panel and all that stuff, but you also know the security side because that certification does focus on the security workflow of how do you notarize your images, how do you protect your images and your registry. And I think for business, especially for enterprise, the security side of it can be a bit nebulous, so it's great to have a certification that focuses a bit on that, has topics centered around security, so that you're not just walking in the door and saying, yeah, I know how to I deploy containers, but I really don't know anything about how to lock it down. Because if you've been in seeing the news in the last year, we've had a couple of issues with people putting orchestration on the internet with no passwords, like car companies, stuff like that. So no big deal. Probably should lock that down, but get certified, and then you'll at least know what you got to do. Let's see. All right. Any other questions in the chat? What's the best way to handle a WordPress upgrade in a Swarm?
It's a Nils question.
that is. And I think the last time that Nils and I were on the show together, we talked about that. So I'm going to say this again. On this, it's a great question on the YouTube chat. You're in my chat on my channel. So in that channel, look up Nils, Nils, and I bet you'll find a prior talk where we talk about WordPress, we talk about storage in WordPress. Basically, you got to make sure with WordPress, just like any other website front end, that all your databases and storage are in volumes, and then you can essentially at that point just replace containers. But always do it on a test system with like backups of your real data, and then try the upgrade. Don't just try it in production to see if it'll work. But essentially, you're just going to be updating your Swarm services, and those volumes will hold the data. So, yeah. Jenny, are we putting links in the YouTube chat, or what's the plan on the links? I think we were.
Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna do.
Okay. What was the one for
Slack?
Slack.
It's docker.ly Slack. Docker B.
DOC. Spell it out for me. I'll type
DOCKR.ly.
Yep.
/Slack. And again, that's on the dockercon.com homepage.
Right. So that's definitely something you want to get in. That's a free resource from Docker to ask questions. And then depending on the channel, like there's a lot of help you can get in there. Obviously use that as well as forums.docker.com. That's a good place for help, as well as places like Stack Overflow. And if you're in one of my courses, you know about Docker Mastery Slack chat. So you know that that's a good place to hang out and talk with people. All right. Well, thank you both so much for being on the show today. We're counting down the days to Docker. Do you know DockerCon? Do you know, Jenny, the number of days off the top of your head?
No. Maybe what are we, 25?
Yeah. Shouldn't this be on a whiteboard at this point? Like you're wiping off the days like.
It adds a little bit extra stress to have the countdown at this point. 2 weeks out, I'm good with it.
Nice. And Nils is going to be there early, I'm sure, because he's going to have to deal with some of that jet lag. So we'll be hanging out on the weekend. We'll probably be putting some selfies up of Nitro Coffee because we're super big fans of the Nitro. And you'll be seeing that on Twitter throughout the conference every morning.
Every morning.
I'll give you my coffee update of the team. And yeah, so if you're going to be at DockerCon again, say hi to one of us, say hi to all of us, take a selfie, get a high five, ask us all the questions. And we will be back here next week, this exact time on YouTube Live, same channels and different guests. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week on the internet.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Brett.
Bye.
Thanks, Nils.
Thanks. See ya.